everybody, and welcome to a slightly windy version of Ed's boat. Right, in the last episode we put the hearth in, and in this episode I'm going to put the stove in. What you're about to see is me putting my stove in on my boat and how I feel that the rules and regs apply to me. This is not a tutorial in any way, shape or form. Also, please don't hit comments with lots of questions about your stove. I'm not really here to answer the technicalities of it, and besides that, there's that many variables that can happen with where you position it, what type of stove you have, orientation, this sort of thing. It would be impossible to pass any sort of comment. If I were to set myself up as some sort of authority and maybe back that up with a story scenario or something like that, and a loosely associated qualification, and advise you incorrectly, well, then I would have to take some responsibility in case of an accident, and I'm really not here for that. So we're going to get over to the boat and carry on with installing the stove. I need to drill some holes in these tiles to fix the stove down with, and these tiles are remarkably hard, so I'm using a proper tile cutting bit that you can buy. These are quite cheap, but I've actually borrowed this one. We'll see how it works. A normal masonry bit just will not do it, it burns out. So I'm going to try this and see how it works. So I've got my marked spot. I need to come in at a bit of an angle and we'll start drilling, and the key is to go slowly and just let it cut its way through. And that's it, we're through. So that's one hole cut in nicely. And not a bad job either. Now I've got holes drilled through the feet which line up with the holes that I drilled through the tiles. So it's just a question of putting some hefty size screws in to hold it down. And there we are. Is it fixed down securely? Well, let's test it. Yes. Now the stove is firmly fixed down, I'm able to give it a quick service and look into it just for a general health check, if you know what I mean. So on the side here, obviously I've got rid of any sort of loose paintwork and re-blacked the stove, so you know she's looking quite nice. Redone these cement seals. They were in white fire cement and it just didn't look right, so I've dragged all that out and redone them with a different colour cement actually, and it looks just so much nicer. I've got the door removed so I can go inside and inspect the brickwork. And the brickwork, well, you can't really see very well in this light, but I assure you that brickwork is really good. We've taken out, this one has a grate joggler, which is to knock the ashes down. That's all serviced and working nicely. I don't know if we can focus better on that. So now I'm happy that the inside of the stove is fine. I've got no cracks or anything like that. I can put the ash pan back in and the front grate back in and have a look at the damper. The next thing I needed to do was to go out and buy some steel. So I went out and bought some 60mm flat iron, 5mm thick, and I made this steel frame, just 3 pieces welded at each end. Now what I'm going to do with this, I'll show you in a moment, but I need to just clean up the welds a little bit for cosmetic reasons, drill a couple of retaining holes, degrease it, and then paint it. So the finished article actually goes around the base of the hearth to finish the edge up, but it does one other thing. But before I go any further with that, I just need to retain it. So those holes that I drilled, just going to put some screws in to hold it. and that should stop it moving around and keep it in place nicely. Well, the surround is all done and fitted and screwed in nicely, but why have I done that? Why have I decided to put an iron band all the way around the outside? Well, the simple reason is when I checked my paperwork on the issue, I need 225 millimeters of clearance on the hearth out the front, and I haven't got that. So that would just be too far into the boat, and I wasn't happy with that. But the diagram also says if you have an upstand, a lip here, of 25 millimeters, I can reduce that gap to 150, and my measurement is actually 180 to the edge of that, so I'm well within that. But what about the positioning of my stove front to back? Well, by my reckoning, because of the system I've used to hold the backboard on, I can have a distance there of down to 45 millimeters according to the diagram. Mine is actually measuring up at about 110. I thought 45 was a bit small, so I've made it slightly bigger, and I'm happy that that will sort of conform as far as I can see. Well, that's the stove mounted in position. Okay, I've given it the once over. I've checked the cement seals and tidied them up. They are fine. The rope seals for the door and the glass, they're fine. Glass is in good condition. The stove vents, I've got 3 of them on this one. They've been checked over and cleaned out, they're fine. And so has the damper. So I'm happy that the stove's in good condition to carry on with the rest of the installation. And the next thing to do is to put the flue on. Unfortunately, my finances don't quite stretch to buy the materials for that yet, but shortly we'll be tackling the flue side of things. So in the next episode, probably be getting on with something else, and then we'll come back to putting the flue in. But there's plenty more to do on the boat anyway. I'm in the well deck at the moment because it's very, very windy outside. But before I go, I wanted to just have a quick word with you about some issues that have happened on YouTube, in particular people feeling down and depressed. And I think Kev, Country House Gent, he touched on the subject slightly, and I agree with what he said, particularly toxic people. But Robbie Cummings, for those of you who watch his channel, mentioned something, he was a bit down, whatever, and that bothers me because I've met Robbie and he's ever such a nice guy, and I don't like to see people down, especially when they're normally so upbeat. Now, I'm not in a position to go out there and help him directly at the moment, but you know, I thought, is there something I could do to maybe help out? So what I thought I'd do is I'll just tell you a little story that might help. So Robbie, if you're watching, I hope this story helps. A little while ago, I was out on my boat and I'd been cruising along for about 2 hours, and I decided to pull over and take a break. So I stepped off with the centerline and pulled the boat towards the side. And as the boat touched the side of the canal, it made this horrible noise, really loud, reverberating noise. And that panicked me a bit. So I tied the boat up and set about investigating this horrible noise. Now, if I was to describe this noise, it would sound like somebody strumming really hard on an electric guitar. So I started looking all over the boat, trying to find out what the cause of this horrible noise was. But I couldn't find anything. So still a bit nervous, I decided just to set off and carry on cruising for a little while and just see whether that noise came back. Well, I was cruising along and everything seemed fine. So I pulled over for lunch this time a little while later, stepped off with the centerline and started to pull the boat towards the bank again. But as the boat touched the side of the canal, exactly the same thing happened, this horrible reverberating noise. And it sounded just like somebody strumming really hard on an electric guitar. Well, that panicked me a bit. I set about looking around the boat, still couldn't find what was wrong. So I decided to turn the boat round and head back to the marina. When I got back to the marina, I went straight to see the marina engineers, and I said to them, I've got this horrible noise. When the boat touches the side of the canal, it makes this really loud reverberating noise, and I'm not joking, it sounds just like somebody strumming hard on an electric guitar. I need you to have a look at it. And they did. Turns out I've got the wrong type of fenders on. Take care, and I'll see you soon.